I was fired for declining the shot. I've been suing ever since. Thank God for Bobby Kennedy and Children's Health Defense. They picked up my lawsuits.
I know you talked publicly about how you left the teachers union because the teachers union was weaponized.
They've been horribly corrupted with politics that goes way beyond their membership. And when COVID came, it was clear they were not representing their members at all.
What happened to just teaching English, math, science, and history
I think it would be great if we could just deal with children as children.
and not treat them like political assets?
I've seen schools where kids aren't on their phones all day and then where they are. This is one of the reasons I'm so excited about Bobby Kennedy making it into HHS, the MAHA movement in general. The conversation has shifted drastically.
I'm Nicole Shanahan. Welcome to Back to the People podcast, which highlights the growth of a movement uniting America, where our government is free from corporate capture and where we give voice back to the American public. Michael Kane, thank you so much for joining me today on Back to the People podcast. You are a teacher and most well known for Teachers for Choice, a organization you founded to give teachers a place to go to voice their concerns about vaccine mandates.
Yeah.
So, why did you want to become a teacher, especially in this day and age? It seems like
Mm.
a really tough profession.
Yeah. So I went to school for digital art and design and got a degree and realized I don't want to do this. And so after I got that, I was in a band actually, and my drummer's wife came home every day really happy. And I was like, "What do you do?" She said, "I'm a job coach." I said, "What's a job coach?" And she explained to me she works with adults with disabilities and helps them find work and helps them find employment. I said, "That sounds interesting." And I just kind of fell into that. And I worked with adults with disabilities for 5 years and actually loved it. It was really fulfilling. It was fun. I met some amazing people and just learned a lot about people with disabilities are people. And like that was really, I still run into some of these people that I worked with in job coaching. Oh man, like 15, 20 years ago in the neighborhood. And, we talk but there was no money in that, unfortunately, and somebody said, "You should work with kids. That'll probably work for you." And I went that route, and I was a special education teacher, for nearly 15 years in New York City, and then COVID came, and now I'm not. I was fired, for declining the shot. I've been suing ever since. Thank God for Bobby Kennedy and Children's Health Defense. They picked up my lawsuits. We're still suing today in a case called Kane versus de Blasio, as well as New Yorkers for Religious Liberty versus City of New York, and many, many other cases too. But those are the two big federal cases going on for years. And yeah, that's my journey in a nutshell, I guess.
Teachers are such great people. It wouldn't be where I am today without great teachers. Not all teachers are great people, I'm realizing. So, what happened? And before we get into the COVID stuff and the vaccine mandate world, uh, what's going on right now with the teachers' unions? It seems like they've become really a arm of the Democratic Party. Lots of parents these days feel like they're living in this Kafka-esque relationship with teachers who, are really focused on themes that are not really based around just simple, I'm here to be the teacher and to serve my community, but rather I'm a watchdog for all of these ideologies, right? So, teachers now in the state of California can't tell a parent if their child changes their pronoun. I mean, it's just very odd, and I'm hearing a lot of stuff. Teachers telling on other teachers, and it's very odd. It's like a very weird situation we're in today with our education system. What happened to just teaching English, math, science, and history?
Yeah, it's an upside down world. It's a really difficult political situation. It's really a shame that the classroom has become so politicized, left or right, either way. With one of the best Social studies teachers I ever worked with, a man named Peter Otto, said, "I don't wanna teach you to believe what I believe. I want you to teach you to think critically. I want to teach you to figure this out on your own. I'll give you the facts and I'll give you the pathway, but we really should be teaching kids to think, not what to think." Now with the situation with gender and gender identity, you have that in California. They can't tell parents, and in Florida, parents have to sign that I approve my child having a different pronoun in order to do it. I think a teacher just got fired for defying that because that teacher believed they were doing the right thing by defying that. Now there's a political firestorm in a school in Florida over that. It's really a shame overall. It's a difficult situation to deal with because I've had multiple middle school children come up to me. They happen to always be girls and tell me, I'm not Lisa, I'm Lou, or whatever the case was. And almost every time that was in seventh grade, by the time they hit ninth grade, it was done. And they were over that and they were done and it was gone. And so I had a few conversations with them. I had a few conversations with guidance counselors, but it didn't become a huge deal either way, just from my experience. Like if somebody didn't call them that or if somebody did call them that, and just talking to them about it and just hearing them out every time, and this is just my experience, they ended up saying, "Oh, no, that was a phase, I'm Lisa again," and I think it would be great if we could just deal with children as children, deal with them as they come to us.
And not treat them like political assets.
Yes, or not treat them these situations should be rare. It should be rare that a child is saying, "I am not a girl, I am a boy," or vice versa. We should deal with it individually, based on that child and that child's needs. We shouldn't all of a sudden say to the entire school, "Hear ye, hear ye. Everybody must now do this." So I think individualization is really an extremely important thing when we're dealing with these really, really charged issues, from my experience.
Yeah, it's really tough, and, um, it seems that, teachers tend to, lean left. You're in New York, I'm in California, and the teachers union itself, engages very heavily in political activities, endorsing candidates sometimes. Do you think it would be better if there were no teachers union? Or, I know you talk publicly about how you left the teachers union because the teachers union was weaponized during COVID, to enforce mandates, lockdowns, and this pedagogy around vaccines, and masking and all of that, and any introduction of anything that was, science that showed, well, yeah, I think the kids would benefit from being outside without masks. Like that was you couldn't say things like that if you presented information that was very reasonable at a time in which it was needed. You were effectively cast out or punished.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we were certainly pushed out and punished for having anything that wasn't, Faucian or, dogmatic. Like you needed to really walk that line. So um, there's definitely a target on me. Although I got plenty of high fives in the hallway when no one was looking too. Plenty of people were like, "I wish I could do what you're doing, Mike. God bless you. I hope you win." And that sentiment is very strong today, actually. And
It is?
yes,
Hmm.
yes. And I'll get into that. But you asked about teachers unions. Um, I don't think teachers unions shouldn't exist, but national and now international unions are a plague, right? Randy Weingarten, the head of the American Federation of Teachers, went to the Ukraine on a mission. Why is the head of the teacher union going to the Ukraine? I'll tell you why, because she's really good friends with Joe and Jill Biden. That's why. Jill being a teacher and Joe, she's always loved him. She became an arm of that administration. Why didn't she go to Russia too? Well, I'm sure there was teachers in Russia during this war that were having hard times as well too. That would be the way to do that if you wanted to do that. But the truth is, you should stay out of there. You should stick to bread and butter issues for teachers here in America where you represent us. So that politicalization is extremely, extremely dangerous. I do support small local unions for sure, because if you're trying to go and negotiate with the principal or the
Mhm.
superintendent what your salary should be, like all by your lonesome. I understand why we need unions. And I think, Nicole, historically, I wouldn't be middle class without
Mhm.
unions. If I just look down the line of my father was a bricklayer, my mother was a letter carrier. I got over a dozen teachers in my family. So I respect the institution of unions, but they've been horribly corrupted with politics that goes way beyond their membership. And when COVID came, it was clear they were not representing their members at all. It ended up being Randy Weingarten going on Meet the Press and in August of 2021 and saying it's time to mandate our members. And that was it. From that moment, then Mayor Bill de Blasio did the mandate because the truth is Randy Weingarten's more powerful than
Yeah.
him. So when she gave the signal, it was okay. Mayor de Blasio, with a big smile, brought it down on the teachers first. So this over politicalization is horrendous. But I support what unions are supposed to be. They're supposed to have workers coming together um, to stand up for your rights and to have a good life and to have a middle class. So I support that, but we're a long way away from it.
So those high fives you're getting in the hallways of people that are like, "Michael, you're the guy. I wish you were in this leadership position and not these other people who are driving us further and further into this abyss of ideological, it's this ideological conundrum and taking away our rights as teachers and making us pay these dues and not standing up for us." Um, how do we get a guy like Michael Kane to run the teachers union instead of, Jill Biden's bestie?
so So at the time when things went down with COVID, I did leave the union. I saw no other option. I saw no one supporting us. And I led kind of a movement in New York City, at least at that time, that did that. And we got fired and then we had to fight in the courts. And we lost our jobs and we didn't come back and we're still fighting in the courts. And then it was about a year and a half, 2 years after that, Labor Day in New York City. Maybe 50, 60, 70 fired workers, mostly teachers. We went to the union Labor Day rally, right? There was a big, all of labor comes out in New York City. And we went right to where the teachers union, the UFT, that's the New York City United Federation of Teachers. That's the New York City local under Randy Weingarten, where Randy came up in before she became the national leader. We went right up the street where they were. We had all of our sign, end all mandates, and we chanted, end all mandates, let us work. And we did that a couple of times, and all the rank and file cheered, all of them in huge. We were actually surprised because in New York City, we were like, whoa, that's pretty intense. A number of us engaged Randy Weingarten. Randy ran away from me. She wouldn't talk to me. But it forced her into a situation where she came on my show on CHD TV on Children's Health Defense. And she was there for a half hour taking questions from me um, because she had a local internal union problem there. Here's this dude, Mike Kane, that's fired, and my members are cheering for him right now. That's an issue, right? Even if we didn't have all the national cameras on it, that's an issue internally for her. So today we have in New York City a slate called ABC, which stands for a better contract, that is challenging um, the Michael Mulgrew, which is the head of the UFT in New York City, and they're running strictly on bread and butter issues. They're running on, how do we make working conditions better? How do we meet the needs of our schools and our children? I know some of the people that are there. I don't agree with all of them, but they're very, very diverse. They have from an extremely progressive member to someone running on their treasurer for the treasurer position whose husband is a cop and has a much different political view than some of the other people there. And they finally have addressed pandemic era decisions. Nobody is doing that, but this slate ABC is doing that. And while they don't have a full agreement on within the slate and within the arguments that they're having this conversation when nobody else will. So I've really supported that and are supporting them, and we'll see what happens in the internal New York City politics there.
Yeah, really interesting. And glad that you got the cheers and the support because it is hard to stand up to an institution, and as you well stated, an institution that is more powerful than even the mayor of New York City itself. And so that, like, look, we all know that if you want to influence the direction of a nation, you address the educational system of children. That is how you change the future of the world, is through the school systems. And let's just face it, the 90s, it was already hard to be a teacher in the 90s, when MTV and Nickelodeon were taking over the airways, and grunge rock was, popular, and headbanging and all of that. Like, that was already hard in the 90s. Now, in 2025, you have historic chronic illness. You have the lockdown, so an entire generation that missed years of socialization were inside on screens, addicted to screens, didn't get outside enough, didn't socialize, missed proms. You could go on and on and on about how horrible that was for children. Um, what else do we have going on? We have multiple wars overseas. We have historic levels of debt in our country. We have a food system that is, really way more toxic than what we had in the 90s. And again, the screen stuff, the screen addiction, the tech addiction, the influencer markets, which are dominating their attention, general disrespect for a lot of things that kids once learned to respect, right? How impossible is it to be a teacher today?
It's pretty impossible. It's a pretty bad situation. I got into teaching in 2007, in Queens in New York City. It was tough. It was certainly tough then. The phones weren't all over the classrooms yet. That was just kind of budding and happening. And you had all the problems that inner city schools have and stuff. I did love it. I connected with a lot of kids. I was able to do a lot of good. And I know teachers today doing the same thing, doing a lot of great work. And it is definitely possible despite all of the litany of things that you just laid out there. The one thing that really isn't insurmountable is that lost time during COVID. You don't make that up. I don't care what anybody says. The teacher union in New York City has to throw more money at it. We're going to do summer rising, whatever brand, summer school, whatever brand they put on it to say, like, we're going to fix everything now. The time that was lost was lost. Wherever your kid was, whatever their age was, whatever that was, they have a learning loss, a socialization loss that can't be recouped. It's a very unfortunate reality. The one good thing out of the pandemic that I saw, maybe a couple, but one was that ultimately everybody had to admit, yeah, school closings were horrible for kids. Even Randy Weingarten was forced to admit that. That's hopefully we never see that again.
What about online education? Google Classroom took off.
That's true.
Like, that's what I have walked away with, is that online education is not a substitute for in person with a teacher, school, and classmates environment.
Absolutely, and at that time, then Governor Andrew Cuomo in New York State launched Reimagine Education, which was this whole concept of online learning, remote learning, and they were actually even thinking about and talking about the school being a place to check into, like not a place that you had a real in-person foundation in. But thank God that utterly just fell apart and it failed because the learning loss, the depression. For me, I taught children with middle school children and high school children with disabilities remotely during the pandemic. It was a nightmare. I would come on oftentimes and just do riddles for 20 minutes just because I wanted to see a kid laugh, just because I wanted them to have fun, because it was so dark for so many of those kids. To teach them, number sense, or to teach them whatever it was that we were up to at that point, was nothing compared to just, I hope the kid comes back. I hope the kid logs on, because you would just have kids that would check out and wouldn't show up. So just giving them a time that they could connect and that we can have fun became very, very valuable. And it just always stuck with me. It's something I'll never forget. I hope we're never teaching through screens again. It was horrible.
Yeah, it's interesting because many in the world of online education have touted how incredible it is to teach children complex studies and the amount that goes into Edtech, we call it here in Silicon Valley, education technology, Edtech. There's tons of interest in it, but clearly technology and children with aptitude, they're not directly correlated, right? So in fact, what is it? One in three children can read or there's something like 30% are actually proficient in reading today.
Right. Yeah, the numbers are staggering. And COVID definitely pushed that into the wrong direction. It's worse than ever. And the CDC has all these new benchmarks. It used to be you should be walking at 12 months. Now it's 18 months, right? Should be speaking at or babbling at a certain age. And they've changed that as well too. It was already headed in the wrong direction, and COVID and online learning definitely made it tank even worse than anything that we've seen before. I will say there is the occasional introverted kid who never got along with people at school who did thrive in online learning, where they didn't have those social pressures. They weren't so self-aware and self-conscious. I saw one. I saw one during COVID that happened with. So I just wanna put that out there. There might be some again, looking at it individually, there might be some individual kids who can at certain times benefit from that. But overall, 99% of my experience was it was not beneficial for them, and it was going in the wrong direction. And how do you fix that now? Um, I it's a really tough thing because I do think it's like a black eye on a generation that they just move forward with. I have young kids, thank God they didn't go through that. They're now in a much more normal situation for education, thankfully. But for all the kids who did go through it, I think they will always carry with them some impact on from that.
Calling all curious minds, thrill seekers, deep thinkers, debate lovers, story chasers, those who question everything, and those who just love a great read. At Skyhorse Publishing, everything is on the table, and we mean everything. We stand for free thought, bold ideas, and fearless storytelling. Whether it's uncovering the truth, teaching a new skill, or sparking inspiration, we publish books that matter. With 12,000 plus titles in print and 400 more on the way, Skyhorse is one of the most dynamic independent publishers. We challenge the status quo. We bring every perspective to the table, giving readers a place to explore, question, and grow. Want the truth behind the headlines? Read Rand Paul's Deception, The Great COVID Cover-Up. And pull back the curtain on power and public health with RFK Jr.'s The Real Anthony Fauci. Work hard, move fast, have fun, and change lives for the better. That's the Skyhorse way. Go to skyhorsepublishing.com/BTP to learn more. Skyhorse Publishing. Get reading because the sky's the limit.
What do you think is going on with the population of individuals who want to be teachers today? Um, if I look in the 90s, I probably would have been up for a teaching job. In 2025, like, if I'm a young woman, moving into my career, I'm not sure I would feel confident going into a teaching job today. Like, what are the kind of qualities and tools you'd recommend an individual have and consider before going into teaching at a public school?
To be able to teach at a public school, especially at a city or inner city urban school, because that's what my background really was in. I think the first thing is you need some ability of performance. Like, I think everybody should, like, get on a stage, learn a comedy routine, pick up a
Yeah.
guitar, something like that, because I taught middle school for a long time. Man, you didn't cut it up right, your button's off or something. Those kids are coming at you, right? They're gonna dissect everything about you, and if you think that doesn't throw you off your game, I mean, it throws you off your game. So, um That's the first thing is you're performing. You need to grab
Yeah.
attention from the kids. So I really think that that's not. I had a couple people tell me that, and I often tell people that. I wish it was said more often. I wish it was actually worked into the curriculum as you're becoming a teacher to just know and understand that you got to grab attention,
Mhm.
right? You got to be able to get these kids who could care less about you to, for some reason, care for you. I think you also really have to care about kids. You have to like kids. I have seen, thankfully not too many, but I have seen teachers that don't like kids. What are you doing here? Why are you around? Find something else to do. I think that's really important because when we talked about teachers unions before, that's an unfortunate reality. And I was a union delegate, so I know like inner uh, teacher politics in the unions, and I've seen people say, and there's some truth to it, this union represents teachers. It doesn't represent children. That's been said. I mean, it's out there in the literature as well too, and I've heard teachers say this to me. Um, that's a problem. On some level, I get it because you want your profession protected. But if you're not viewing that as equal to the protection to the kids, that can be a real issue. And I think that's part of what happened in COVID is the fear took over the teachers so much that if I go there, I'm gonna die. You want to kill me. This is really what teachers banded around that sort of psychosis, I think, is what it was. They really felt that they were gonna die by going into this building. Once that happens, how are the kids in the equation at all? They start saying, "No, we're protecting the kids. We're protecting them from going to school where it's dangerous." And I think that, it's important for teachers and hopefully for leaders in the teachers unions and such, to have a sensitivity and a deep caring and compassion for the children as well too. I think those are the biggest things. I think that teachers need. I think a lot of the other stuff you can figure it out. You don't know how to teach social studies or whatever. There's a class for that, but like being able to perform and care about kids, I don't know that you really need to have.
It just seems so tough that you have all of these pressures now from the government, the Department of Education, then you have the local school board. It just seems like the administrative weight on each individual teacher is so heavy. And then you have the parents, and parents that come in and put pressure, and my kid is not doing this, or my kid said this, or my kid felt that like this didn't go in their favor and that you like singled them out. I mean, like, I can't imagine how hard it is to be a teacher, and then the pay isn't great, and in many of these cities you're just barely getting by. um I mean, no wonder there's not that many great teachers out there anymore. It is just so like farmers and teachers, two of the hardest working, most unrecognized heroes in our society, the good ones, anyways, the ones that do things the right way. Because to do things the right way as a farmer is very hard. To do things the right way as a teacher is very hard. But to do things poorly, very easy. To be a terrible farmer, you can just kind of get by, right? Throwing chemicals on your crop. As a teacher, too, you can probably just get by doing whatever is like the teachers union politically wants you to do, and you can like do everything else poorly, and you get rewarded. I mean, it's kind of backwards right now. But yeah, what are your thoughts on the Department of Education and its potential of being abolished?
I'm actually pretty optimistic about that. I think that's a good thing because you talk about administrative weight. And I think there's a lot of it at the Department of Ed. They're not really chopping away things that go to kids from chopping away the Department of Education. There's IDEA money for kids with disabilities. There's other money that's statutorily required that Congress has appropriated that money. Now you have Bobby Kennedy's in charge of special ed and nutrition money, and I forget there's some of the other money went to other agencies as well too. That's still happening, but there's lots and lots of jobs for adults that isn't there. And to me, there's something very apropos about adults losing their jobs right now in education. Right? If you're up in the administrative class of education in this country and you lost your job, am I crying over that? You've done so good. This is just what Bobby Kennedy says about HHS. We have such healthy kids that we don't need to cut 20% of the HHS staff. So I'm actually quite supportive of that. And we'll see. I'm not an expert there. I'm open to be proven wrong there.
Yeah, but if you're an average teacher, right, in the United States today, like, you're not really crying for the abolishment of the Department of Education, right? If you're being totally honest.
You know who is crying? Randy Weingarten. There was a lot of power and leverage there for her. She's consistently voted to be one of the 50 most powerful people in the nation in Washington, D.C. Well, that really hurts her, right? She's got to go deal with Bobby Kennedy. She's got to go deal with other people now for whatever her agenda is, as opposed to probably long term relationships in the Department of Ed with maybe I'll call them deep state educational bureaucrats, right? That she knows for a long time. You also brought up in terms of administration and in terms of competence about how it's hard to be a good farmer or a good teacher, right? To do regenerative agriculture or organic the correct way. And same thing with teaching. But to just throw some chemicals on your farm or to just get by, it actually really strikes a chord with me because you see teachers accused of abuse. You see teachers who do nothing, but they know their contract. They know who their chapter leader is. They know how to get by. You see teachers who have abused children, they get due process. When we said no to the COVID shot, there was no due process. There's actually a statutory law in New York, not negotiated by the union, a law in New York State that sets up teacher tenure. They just threw it away. They just threw it out. They didn't give us any due process at all. So that idea about because I stood up for my rights because I knew the Constitution, because I knew I was correct. I knew I did not need and should not be forced to do this thing. My union completely abandoned me. There's so many amazing teachers that lost their jobs in New York and Los Angeles too, and a lot of the big cities. And these are people who had real conviction, who really believe stuff in their heart and soul. And these are the people that got cut out. We're the guy that says, like, oh, it's my prep. I'm done. I'm out of here. I can't see this kid. That teacher is totally protected because he's following the union contract and knows their contract. It's sad, and that really strikes a chord with me.
Yeah, no kidding. What do you think about schools looking more and more like prisons? I mean, it's like there's layers and layers and layers of security now. My fiance just picked up his niece from school yesterday, and he was like, it was like a prison. There was like 3 layers of security and buzzing in, and then there's a whole like checking out, and the schools just don't look like fun, happy places. A lot of them, these public schools, and this has been true since I was a kid too, but the schools kind of look like prison facilities. Of course, there's this increase of school shootings. It's tragic. It's horrible. Um, I mean, and again, like there's stuff related to HHS there where we're gonna investigate these school shootings. Um, but like, if you're a teacher walking into this setting every day and you're responsible for these young people, um a- and you're looking around, it's probably hard for someone to say this is the right environment to teach in.
Yeah, it's it's uh it's a real tough one. Depends on the school, depends on the neighborhood. Schools are a product of the neighborhood they're in, of the people that make up that neighborhood, of the lawmakers, of everything that goes on. So a lot of times things get just pushed off to schools or to teachers and such, and it really needs to be looked at bigger than that because I've been in between two kids when one got stabbed. Like I've seen that situation, and what happened with me was there was one security officer that was on duty at that time. Administration happened to be out. There was an assistant principal, but it's just one of those times. Sometimes you wonder if the kids know that like this was like an opportunity. And the school wasn't even a really a bad school. It was in the city, but I've seen that, and I've seen schools way worse than that as well too. And as an educator and student, you want to feel safe. And sometimes, if that means you have more security, you need that because where else are you going to go? Nicole, these kids don't have homeschool options, right? They don't have a co op to go to, especially in the cities and stuff. This is where they're going to be. They largely in New York City don't have school choice, right? So they're kind of locked in for the most part. You don't want violence and death and blood. So sometimes I understand the increased security because we're in the world we're living, right? And to come to a school that's having problems like that and to say, wait, this security is making kids feel uncomfortable. Well, getting stabbed in the chest makes you feel uncomfortable, even more so. So that's a reality you have to deal with, right? That dealing with that is bigger than just one school. It goes into the whole. I mean, it's spiritual at the end of it as well, too, is like for all of us, what are we made of and what are we putting out there into our communities and our society? So I feel that it goes beyond just the school itself, because once I'm in a community that is the way it is, I need this place to be safe for kids to have any shot at learning. How do we do that? So sometimes the options aren't the best.
American ranchers steward our land. Buying 100% U.S. born, pasture raised, and processed meat supports American ranchers and American farmland. That's why I'm glad to partner with Backyard Butchers. Backyard Butchers is delivering quality meat directly from the ranch to your doorstep. All Backyard Butchered beef is certified pasture raised. This means animals are never confined to a feedlot and are able to roam freely and behave naturally on pastures. This roaming can function as a natural fertilizer and benefits soil and water health. It also tastes delicious. Backyard Butcher's meat comes straight from Texas ranchers where they know the actual rancher and how the meat was raised and processed. They have beef tallow for your skin or your french fries. Check out the Steakhouse box. It's got T-bones, fillets, incredible burgers, and more. There's something every member of the family will love. Backyard Butchers is good, fresh meat raised in Texas the right way. Go to backyardbutchers.com/Nicole and use code Nicole for 20% off. That's backyardbutchers.com/Nicole, code Nicole for 20% off. You know, kids these days, I'm hearing, especially amongst teenagers, there's a lot of anxiety, depression, and medication going on, including some of these kids are self-medicating or mixing their medications or getting stuff off the streets. This is not, again, the 90s where it's like you're concerned about one or two serious class A drugs with potential fatal reactions, but now you're dealing with like dozens of different street drugs that could potentially kill these kids. Fentanyl, you know, and again, this just goes back to it is so hard being a teacher today. I mean, my gosh.
I actually like with laying all that out, that just makes me think how hard it is being a parent today, right?
Yeah.
Because like as a teacher dealing with that stuff, and I've dealt with some situations like that with kids that I've worked with, there's some removal from it. Like I'm there with them in the day. I'm doing the best I can. I have the counselors, we have the social worker, we're doing all the different things that are available to us. But to the parent, I mean, this is their baby, this is their child, and I've lost cousins and people in my family to overdoses and to situations like that. And it's one of those things now that like it doesn't matter where you are, doesn't matter where you're at, and it doesn't matter how much money you have. It's reality. It's reality that we're all facing and that we all have to deal with. There's also some sort of sense of and it's always been there, but the feeling, the need to escape, the feeling, the like claustrophobia, the trapped in, this phone addiction that we're seeing from the kids as well too. That's just destroying their neurochemistry as well. In New York, the governor here, who I despise, to be honest, Kathy Hochul, did something that I actually agree with. Bell to bell, no cell phones in schools. That's something that now the schools are now actually implementing in New York. I support that. I agree with that. I've seen schools where kids aren't on their phones all day and then where they are. You completely and totally see the difference. And I think when you're dealing with various types of drugs, legal and illegal street drugs, I think that it's increasing now because I think anxiety and panic is almost like the texture of the culture today, especially for kids. That I I don't remember that, when I was growing up in the '80s and the '90s. I mean, in middle school and high school, yeah, there was plenty of all of that normal angst, but there's something else there now too.
I mean, there was weed and, you'd try to get some beers and it just seemed a lot more simple than the existential, like, kids would be depressed about a breakup or a heartache, or a teacher would frustrate them, or sports would frustrate them, but there's something else. There's this whole other giant dark heaviness that is present today for young people that we just did not have.
I agree with that. Thankfully, I still see a lot of good kids come up through it. I still see a lot of kids make their way through it, similar to how we did and how a lot of people that I know. That does make me hopeful. But a lot of kids are on these drugs before they're out of single digits. They're prescribed them. They're put on things that oftentimes, is that really the best move for this 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old kid? That happens today where we're looking at Bobby Kennedy now removing the dyes out of foods. That, think of how much of just petroleum kids are consuming. Have we really looked into what that does for ADHD before you put them on speed, before you put the kid on Ritalin, right? So there's that disconnection from nutrition and from good care and wholesomeness on so many levels that just leads to bad decisions on top of bad decisions.
Well, so then here you are, a teacher receiving these children, right? Who are biologically not set up to learn, right? Who are biologically not set up to sit down for that many hours a day and be receptive to an adult trying to share with them wisdom, um, knowledge, tools, right? These kids cannot learn. They're physically unable to learn. What can you do about this? Because as a teacher, you're set up to fail for a lot of these children today.
Oh, yeah, 110%.
Like, how is there not, like, a massive national strike, saying that, these kids biologically need proper care, not just medication, not just sedatives, not just, or stimulants. Like, they actually need a, kind of whole child approach.
The teachers' unions, the adults in general, trust the science.
Ugh.
They defer to what the science says. Like, if I was in a meeting with a parent and they were medicating their kids and there was different decisions that were made, it would be, I'd probably lose my job if I said, "I don't know if your son should be on that medication." They would say, "Who are you to say? How dare you say that?"
How dare you say that? You're the person who is trying to figure out how to get them the best possible education.
But they would say, "But they would say, "You're not a doctor, you're an educator, you don't have the letters after your name." All of that stuff would happen. This is one of the reasons I'm so excited about Bobby Kennedy making it into HHS, the MAHA movement in general. The conversation has shifted drastically, and a lot of these things that are happening, a lot of the changes that are happening, the fact that we can even start to talk about vaccines despite the pushback from the mainstream media, this conversation is out there now, and I have a lot of hope because, as you say, kids are brought to us broken, and we can't discuss why they broke. Like, that's where now teach them. Now have them learn.
But hold on. If the head of the National Teachers Union has more say, or even the head of the New York Teachers Union has more say than the mayor of New York, don't you think that they could also have the power to say, we need these kids physically well enough before they enter the classroom? If the head of the teachers unions made this a priority over the other silly priorities that they have right now that are ideological, but actually, like, if their priority was successfully teaching children and having teachers that were in a better position to succeed, right? if that was their priority, then it would naturally, logically follow that making sure our kids are healthy and just eating well, exercising, getting enough sunshine, not on antipsychotic drugs, right? The amount of drugs going into these kids, um, personality altering drugs are going into these children that really make them ineffective and sitting through the day. Like, it's very hard, just barely getting across the line. Um, Clearly it's not working. Teachers are set up to fail time and time again. You would think this would be the number one issue the teachers union was talking about.
Right. Well, you brought up priorities, and that's the big thing. It is not the priority of the teachers union to make sure that children are succeeding. It used to be the priority of the teachers union that teachers, their members, were well taken care of. Often there was a residual that helped the kids as well too, but now the priority of the teachers union is national democratic politics. And so that ends up trumping all else. No pun there. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that, but you know what I mean. That ends up being more important than the kids. So you need people that are coming in that are not affiliated and rooted in the teachers union, that are not thinking about uh, political agendas like that, or I hate to admit it, or even the members themselves, and say, what's going on with our children? Let's have these hard conversations. Let's push them forward. And that's exactly what Bobby Kennedy is doing. And if his agenda is allowed to go forward, it's seeing a lot of good momentum about it. I think I'm feeling very optimistic about the agenda going forward. I think we are going to start having kids show up that are ready to learn, that are in that situation. Unfortunately, teachers union isn't built for it. They don't even know how to see it. They're fighting Bobby Kennedy, saying he's the problem. They're saying that he's trying to create genocide on autistic kids. I mean, the conversations and things I'm hearing coming out of the other side sound crazy to me, but it's not crazy to them. They actually really believe it. So they're not built to solve the problem, and I'm glad that we have the situation that we have now. I really believe that Bobby is built to solve this problem.
Well, I'm excited about teacher's choice. So tell me about teacher's choice. Um, I mean, if people just start quitting the teachers union after listening to you and this podcast and the outcry of mothers and fathers that are sick of the indoctrination and lack of real education in the school system, can they go to teachers choice? So what is teachers choice? Are there alternatives to the teachers unions? What is kind of the future of education while the teachers union kind of goes nuts?
Well, so our organization, you can check out at teachersforchoice.org. We really, really focus in on medical mandates. We are 100% opposed to medical mandates for anyone to access society, right? So that's whether it's an adult, a child, a student, a worker. So right across the board, that's how we feel. Where there are mandates, there must be valid, real exemptions, not fake exemptions, not exemptions that are designed to be denied by the Department of Health or whoever denies them, but a real pathway to be exempt from that medical mandate. So that's where we've filled a space that was extremely necessary during COVID, and we've walked into that. Recently, like I've said, in New York City, there is this slate called ABC that is actually engaging our issues. And for a while, they weren't engaging us at all. So I am positive about that, and I'll continue to engage anybody in New York City unions that want to discuss that. As far as the path forward beyond broken unions, because I don't know if this slate that I want, this ABC slate, is going to win. Their elections coming up here in May. We'll see how that goes. If we get the same old, it is a broken, horrendous system. And then we need to move forward. I mean, we're seeing it though, right? We're kind of seeing the marketplace. We're seeing homeschool
Yeah.
skyrocket. We're seeing people vote with their feet.
Hmm.
We're seeing parents that are leaving states that aren't giving
Yeah.
them options, that aren't allowing their kids to be taught the way that they want to be taught. I don't know how long that can continue. Like, I don't know when there's a breaking point in New York City or Los Angeles or Chicago or all of these different places that I feel like the teaching systems are under siege. Um, I don't know, but you know what? A lot of times broken systems go on a lot longer than a lot longer than you wish they would or you think they would. Somehow they continue to just, float out there. So for us with Teachers for Choice, anybody that's having issues with mandates, medical mandates of any type in employment, we are in that battle. We're actually May 14th. We're up in Albany fighting against various medical mandates. There's a bill on the table to let minors get STD related vaccines without parental knowledge or consent. We're fighting that. We've been able to stop things like that. We've been able to stop it from getting worse in New York. And right now, Teachers for Choice has been very focused in on that type of lobbying effort, that type of legislative effort, and political movement as well too.
Have you seen the bill in California that is going to deeper regulate homeschools and charter schools?
Oh, no, I haven't.
Okay, I'll send you that one. I've gotten
I've heard I think there's, like, a national template for that. I think that that's being, like, kinda pitched all around the country right now.
Yeah, it would be just crippling, the reporting requirements on homeschools and small charters and, even ones that don't receive any government support in any way, are going to be subject to new forms of regulations under this bill. Have had tons of homeschool parents reach out to me and say this must be defeated. So I'm gonna put that one on your radar too. Well, Michael, it was such a pleasure to sit down with you today. Farmers and teachers are my heroes in this country. And let me tell you, this country has made it as hard as possible on farmers and teachers to do things the right way. And I think that if we just zeroed in on how to lift the insanity off the backs of teachers, we can get them doing what they do great, which is showing up fully embodied and ready to teach, and loving every minute of it.
And Nicole, I just wanna thank you so much for everything that you're doing, everything you've done. It was such an inspiration when you came on the scene, when Bobby was running for president and then became his VP pick and just really shook things up, and you just putting your money where your mouth is and really being engaged in this. You're one of my heroes, and it's just an honor to be here and, to be on your platform. And, thank you so much for everything you continue to do.
Oh, well, thank you. Good teachers are my hero, and those also that fight for our rights too. I mean, that is just an extra bonus. So thank you so much, Michael, and thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.